So we have Jack Bales with us this morning, and I had told him we would allot the first 30 minutes or so for him to talk about his latest book. And so I've got a topic a little bit later I'd like to talk about on an event where there was an all brothers infield with the Cincinnati Reds. And if there are others who have a topic you want to bring up, you can surely add it to the agenda. So I think Jeff Twist was going to be with us, and then he had to decline at the last minute. He's apparently working on a project about Ted Simmons. So maybe we'll catch him another time. So with that, Jack, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Sure thing. Let me share my screen here.
Okay.
And let me see, click over here and click share, and I'll be all set. And let me get onto the slideshow and come on, there we go. Okay, I'm all set to go here. Make sure it goes back and forth. It does. Okay. Anyway, everybody, thanks very much for having me here. And I appreciate being able to talk about what I think is not only a fascinating baseball story about the 1932 Chicago Cubs, but it's also a terrific tale of what I like to say is a baseball history and a true crime intrigue at the same time. So let me start out with September 20th, 1932, and the Cubs had just clinched the National League pennant with a record of 90 wins and 64 losses and 4 games in front of the second place Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Chicago Daily Tribune was rather stunned by this accomplishment and reported that, quote, never before was a team beset with more irritating experiences apart from the playing of baseball. And little early on, it was thought that there was little pitching besides that of Charlie Root and Pat Malone. But President William Beck had brought in Lod Warnke, who had been a rookie in 1931, but in 1932 he had a 2.38 ERA. William Beck was concerned that they didn't have that Hack Wilson had been treated during the off season, but they brought in Johnny Moore, who stepped up and hit 308 that year. But also there was the obvious, and this plays an important part of my story, there was the obvious bad blood between Cubs manager William Beck and the team's talented but thoroughly disagreeable manager Rogers Hornsby. Now this, as you might already know about that. Now the Sporting News pointed out that the Cubs season provided, as you see here, a succession of varied thrills and tops on both the lists of both the Tribune and the Sporting News. Number one on their list was the July 6th shooting of their star shortstop, Billy Jurgis, in, as the Sporting News put it, an episode of unrequited love. Now, as you can see here, the sensational shooting of the Cubs star shortstop by his former lover immediately captured the public's attention, and everyone wanted to know exactly what had happened in room 509 of the Hotel Carlos in Chicago. Just a few hours after reporters first heard the news, in fact, Chicago's newspapers were on the street with their afternoon editions with banner headlines. Now, while working on a previous Cubs book, I had read about the shooting in a incident in a few Cubs histories. That was a book I was working on, but the authors provided little information besides a few cursory comments. And since I felt the story had made the Cubs season particularly intriguing, I set out to find additional details about it all. And newspaper articles provided both day-by-day coverage and interviews with Billy and Violet and quite a few other people, including the baseball players who found Billy in his hotel room. I went through every single Chicago newspaper page by page on microfilm for that time period. A couple were available online, but most of them were. You know, Chicago Examiner wasn't, Chicago Daily News was not, Chicago Tribune was, but most of the other ones weren't. Chicago court records were extremely valuable, as Violet's father was physically abusive to his wife. There was a long, drawn-out divorce trial. In fact, 8-year-old Violet even had to testify at the divorce hearing. Now, on July 1, 1932. The Cubs were in first place in the National League, and they were in the thick of a tight pennant race. And a player who was contributing to the Cubs' success was 24-year-old Billy Jurgis. Now, on the morning of July 6, 1932, Billy was getting ready for a game with the Philadelphia Phillies that day, which, by the way, they won. But the Cubs were now in third place, 3 games behind the Pirates. At about 9:45 in the morning, Violet Popovich called him from her room 111 here at the Hotel Carlos, and said she wanted to see him. He told her to come on up, and about 10:15, she knocked on his door, room 509, and his room was right up here, top floor, all the way to the right. Now, they had been going out for about a year, but he had recently called things off. He wanted to play baseball, he said, and he wanted to focus all his attention on baseball. And there were other reasons too. And supposedly she had been going out with other guys too, and some other players had kind of warned him about her, saying that she had a reputation, so to speak. Anyway, she wanted to talk about it. As the conversation grew heated, she asked him for a glass of water, and he left the room to get it. And that was a bad move on Billy's part, as you can see here. While he was getting it, she pulled a small caliber revolver from her purse. He lunged for it, and in the ensuing struggle, as they say in the movies, 3 shots rang out. One bullet struck him on the right side, ricocheted off a rib, and came out of his right shoulder. In fact, that's probably what saved his life, the bullet hitting a rib. Another grazed a little finger of his left hand. The third bullet hit Violet's wrist, went up about 6 inches upper arm. As luck would have it, the Cubs team physician, John C. Davis, was at the hotel. He treated them both, and they were taken to a local hospital. Now, the Chicago newspapers, as naturally, pounced on this story, and as they say nowadays, it went viral. Violet stayed at the Illinois Masonic Hospital for a couple of days, along with Billy was there too. And here she is leaving for the Bridewell Hospital, which is right next to the Cook County Jail. She was booked on a charge of assault with intent to kill. Note her bandage there on her left arm. In the meantime, the police searched her hotel room there at the Hotel Carlos, and they found these 2 photographs. They also found a note addressed to her brother, in which she said, quote, "To me, life without Billy isn't worth living, but why should I leave this earth alone? I'm going to take Billy with me," unquote. Now, she later said that the note was the result of, quote, too much gin, and that she only wanted to kill herself to make Billy sorry for breaking up with her. And she said in an interview that when Billy was out of the room getting her a glass of water, quote, "I pulled out my revolver, intending to kill myself. Bill saw me and grabbed the gun. We fought for it. We really fought for it. The gun kept exploding. I didn't want to hurt him." So it gets all dramatic here. Okay, now Violet made the newspapers almost daily, particularly on July 15th, the day of her arraignment. I love this photograph, by the way. A newspaper reporter found it in a file and gave it to me. It's never before been published. Well, it wasn't published in 1932. I gave it to a friend of mine who did the book called The Called Shot, and he used it in that particular book, but then I used it here in mine. It shows Violet with her 2 attorneys. Note the bandage on her left arm. This is the only, I have the original negative, by the way, plus the original wire photo, original negative in one of those manila little envelopes. But anyway, this is the only full body shot of Violet at that particular time. But anyway, the Chicago American said that when Violet entered the courtroom, quote, "the crowd gasped at her radiant beauty." The Daily Illustrated Times wrote that, quote, "she was a symphony in red and white, with her white crepe sports dress, with a red on her white crepe sports dress exactly matching her red lipstick." Now, Billy and the Cubs, I love this photograph too. Billy and the Cubs wanted all this to just quietly go away, and Billy refused to press charges, and the judge dismissed the case. There is Billy, by the way. He's not blowing his nose. He's hiding his face from all the newspaper photographers in the courtroom. There's Violet glancing at one of her 2 attorneys there. Now, Although Billy refused to sign a complaint against Violet, she decided to capitalize on her newfound fame by signing a contract to perform as a singer under her stage name in a show called The Bear Cub Follies. And I don't mean BEAR either. Billing herself as, you can't make this stuff up, the girl who shot for love. Now, the State Congress Theater, there on the sign, calls it Chicago's greatest burlesque. It was a burlesque club on South State Street in a rather seedy area known for its rundown and dingy rooming houses, its hotels, its saloons, its pool halls, and its burlesque theaters. I love this ad. I found this by going through the Chicago Record and Examiner page by page on microfilm, and this suddenly popped out at me. Note, there she is as a girl who shot for love. It's called here the Bear Cub Frolics, but it really was, I think, the Bear Cub Follies. But note that her Bear Cub girls are prominently down there too, and the greatest burlesque show ever presented. I was fortunate enough to find a detailed review of her show in the Chicago Daily News, which also discussed exactly what went on in her burlesque show. The degree of nudity, I found out, depending upon the amount of applause each of the Bear Cub girls got from the patrons. The Bear Cub girls were the opening act. Then came Violet, who sang a couple of songs, much to the disappointment of the theater crowd, who were hoping that she would doff her clothes just like the Bear Cub girls did. By the way, the reviewer was one of the editors for the Chicago Daily News, and he was a rather prominent editor of the time in Chicago. And now I have a senior moment. I can't think of his name, but anyway. Now, Violet's nephew, Mark Prescott, the son of her brother, Mark, he told me that her singing career didn't exactly take off, and that her lack of success may have stemmed from her lack of talent. And I noticed in the newspapers that it was supposed to go for like quite a few weeks, and it kind of died after about a month or so. Anyway, he told me, quote, she liked to sing, he said. That is, she tried to sing. Old Violet had other problems too, and it didn't take long for her to be back in the news. And in the judge's courtroom, after her bail bondsman, a part-time real estate agent and a full-time hustler and con man, stole her Billy Jurgis love letters, saying he wanted to publish them under the title Love Letters of a Shortstop and sell copies at ballparks around the country. He promised her about $25,000. The judge thought this was kind of strange because, the book would have limited appeal. As it turned out, what the bail bondsman really wanted to do was to blackmail Billy Jurgis, a scheme which utterly failed. But anyway, after all this was settled, Violet got her letters back, went to court a couple times, as a matter of fact. She was soon back on the stage, singing at this restaurant and bar here called the Kitty Davis Cocktail Lounge. This is back in the mid 1930s. She was also seeing this man here called Fred Williams, who worked at the office of his father's hardware factory. They applied for a marriage license. They never got married. And by 1940, Violet and her mother had moved from Chicago and were living in Los Angeles. A few years ago, Mark Prescott, the son of Violet's brother, Mark, learned of my research and contacted me. He offered family photographs and personal insights about his aunt, and along with some research, additional details emerged about the sad, strange saga of Violet Popovich. And by the way, this is my favorite photograph of her, taken as a teenager. She looks rather young, sweet, and innocent. Of course, she had this little hassle a little bit later of pulling a gun out of her purse, but this makes me feel kind of sorry for her here. In fact, the Cubs historian Ed Hartig and I were talking about this, and we both said that all she wanted was a nice relationship, white picket fence, 2.2 kids or whatever. But instead she got all her life, she got heartaches, I guess. But anyway, here's Violet's father with his children. Mirko Mike Popovich was an Austrian immigrant who arrived at Ellis Island in 1907. He was an electrician by trade. He moved to Chicago, and in 1910, he married Margaret Heindel, also from Austria. They had 4 kids, of which Violet was the oldest, born in 1911. And the marriage was not a happy one. When Violet was only 10 days old, he started beating his wife, giving her black and blue eyes. The couple got divorced in 1920 on the grounds of, quote, extreme and repeated cruelty. In fact, as I said, 8-year-old Violet even had to testify at the divorce hearing. Child support came slowly, even despite Mike's comfortable salary, and Violet's mother had to put all her kids at the Ulick Children's Home in Chicago, which was run by the Lutheran Church. Right after her divorce, Violet said in interviews that she was married when she was 18, a puppy love affair with a schoolboy, she said, but they divorced 6 months later. And here she is with her mother about the time she got married. And right after her divorce, she enrolled in a dancing school. And in early 1930, she joined the Chicago production of Vanities, which was an annual musical produced by the rather well-known and famous New Yorker named Earl Carroll. He had this show called Vanities, which came out every year in various editions, he called them. And the souvenir pamphlet shown here notes that the show was, quote, America's greatest review, down there in the lower left-hand corner. And right above that in smaller type is, quote, his motto, through these portals past the most beautiful girls in the world. In the summer of 1931, she met Billy at a party. They started going out. And she said that he was the most, if it wasn't love at first sight, it was just about second. That's her take on it anyway. And a year later, the two of them had their dramatic meeting at the Hotel Carlos. She sang in the burlesque show there. She also sang in nightclubs and eventually moved to Los Angeles. Okay, we'll continue with Violet, but let's get back to Billy Jurgis and the Cubs for a minute. Here are the team's infielder with Woody English at third base. Billy Herman would later become the Hall of Famer. A second base, Charlie Grimm, the manager. At first base, Smiling Stan Hack, they called him. He also was in third base occasionally, and then shortstop, Billy Jurgis. Now, Billy rejoined the team, got shot on July 16th. He had the arraignment on July 15th. He rejoined the team on July 22nd. And after their loss to Pittsburgh that day, they found themselves 3.5 games behind the league-leaning Pirates. And everyone was under a lot of stress at that time in August. And on top of that, there were all these whispered comments within the Cubs organization that settled on the obvious animosity between team president William Beck, father of Beck is in Wreck, Bill Beck, the showman, and the manager Rogers Hornsby. Now Beck believed, and he was a real big baseball man. In fact, I wrote a big article for the Baseball Research Journal on William Beck a few years ago, and he believed that the team was easily good enough to win the National League pennant. And he was growing really weary of Hornsby's constant complaining about the team and all their alleged shortcomings, as were the players who had little use for him and his criticizing. Billy Herman said later on that he was one of the greatest hitters of all time, perhaps the greatest of all hitters, but he never talked hitting with us. He always just expected us to go up there and do it. Now things continued to get worse. A loss to the Brooklyn Dodgers on August 2nd put the Cubs 5 games behind the first place Pirates. That evening, Beck fired Hornsby and appointed as manager the popular and left-handed guitar playing first baseman and team captain Charlie Grimm. Now, club president William Beck was concerned about Billy's recovery right after the shooting. And moreover, there was also the loss of the player manager Rogers Hornsby. So Beck brought in infielder Mark Koenig to help out as shortstop. He used to play with the Yankees. And he proved to be an excellent choice as he helped the Cubs clinch the National League pennant on September 20th. And he batted .353 during the 33 games he played for the Cubs from August 14th to the end of the season on September 25. Now, each team would get a share of the World Series gates receipts and the players got to vote on how much each person got, and it had to be a unanimous vote to get a full share. And the two Cub players, Billy Herman and Billy Jurgis, voted not to give Mark Koenig a share of the World Series gate receipts, as he played in just the last part of the season, 33 games. Instead, they voted him only a half share. Now, the New York Yankees, Koenig's former team and the Chicago's World Series opponents, did not see it that way. When the newspapers announced the breakdown of the World Series money, the Yankees and Babe Ruth in particular, especially blasted the Cubs as cheapskates and penny pinchers. As Babe Ruth said, "I hope we beat them in 4 straight." They gave Koenig a sour deal in his player cut. They're chiselers, and I tell him so. Okay, the Cubs were down 2-0 in the World Series when Game 3 was played in Chicago. In the 5th inning, with the score tied 4-4, Ruth was at the plate facing pitcher Charlie Root. The count was at 2 balls and 2 strikes, and Babe Ruth raised 2 fingers of his right hand, as you can see here. Now, did he signal that that was just only 2 strikes? He had a strike left. Did he signal that that was, did he gesture contemptuously to the Cubs dugout at the third base side, Cubs third base dugout? They were heckling them all the time, by the way, constantly heckling them. The audience was the people in the stands were heckling them. Did he gesture to Charlie Root, pitcher Charlie Root, or did he point to center field as if to signal that he was going to hit a home run? That is, did he call his shot? What persons saw depending upon where they were sitting in the angle of the view, and even the home movies at that game were of little help, as Lee Montville and some of the other Ruth biographers pointed out. In any case, Babe Ruth did indeed hit a home run, and people forget that right after that, Lou Gehrig hit a home run too. The Cubs lost that game 7-5, and the following game 2, and the thoroughly demoralized Cubs lost the whole World Series to the New York Yankees 4 games in a row, just as Babe Ruth had hoped. Of course, whether or not Babe Ruth called his shot has been debated ever since October 1, 1932. And by the way, what I found out, I'm no call shot expert, but I did read an awful lot of contemporary news reports and interviews with some of the players, and opinions about whether he did or did not call it. You'd think they'd fall along partisan lines, but that's not true at all. Woody English was one of the principal hecklers at the time, and he was just called Babe Ruth all these names, and he swore up and down. Of course, he called his shot. He pointed to home. He pointed out to center field. Pat Piper, the Cubs announcer, he swore too that he called his shot. Other Cubs said he didn't. Charlie Grimm said he did right afterwards. I saw an article in the Sporting News, but later on in his memoir, he said he did not. Then I found Yankees who said he did, but other Yankees said later on in life, including Joe McCarthy, Frankie Crosetti, said, no, of course he didn't. We saw that made a good story after we saw Joe Williams make that comment in the newspaper here, and you can see it right here that he calls a shot. We all knew it was a makings of a good story. We just all kept mum about it. So there's opinions on both sides about all this. But now, according to the hard-nosed Charlie Root, he said that if Ruth had tried to show him up by signaling where he's going to hit the ball, anybody who knows me knows that Ruth would have ended up on his ass. And Charlie Root wasn't really a hard-nosed player. But, as Thomas Wolfe pointed out in his book, and he and I were talking about this, the called shot, next up, if he had done that, Lou Gehrig would have been up. And would he really put Lou Gehrig on the base, knowing what a good hitter he was? So I wonder whether he just said this and afterwards. But anyway, Charlie Root brooked no interference on this topic during a family outing. everyone was playing a game of wiffle ball. A few months later, the whole family doing a family get together, and Charlie Jr.'s wife was up bat, and she made the mistake of pointing her wiffle ball bat out to center field, and old Charlie wound up with a wiffle ball and hit her right on the neck, knocking her to the ground. Whether she was a daughter-in-law made no difference to him. And the subject rankled him his entire life. He was offered to play himself in the movie The Babe Ruth Story, and he said, not if they're going to show him pointing. He turned down quite a bit of money for that. And the subject rankled him his whole life. Shortly before his death, he told his daughter, I gave my life to baseball, but I'll only be remembered for something that never happened. But as many people have said, does it really matter? Whatever happened, only Babe Ruth and his extraordinary power, his charismatic presence could have transformed a few minutes of baseball into the stuff of American legend. And even Charlie Grimm said, quote, a great guy hit that homer, the greatest slugger of all time. Now, I discuss the rest of Billy's career in my book, including his rather disastrous 1959 and 1960 seasons as manager of the Boston Red Sox. When you become a manager, Billy later told an interviewer, you have to have a team that is coming up. All my players were finishing up their careers, and there was not much I could do there. Jurgis did his best, but he was let go in June 1960 with a disappointing major league managerial record of 59-63 and a winning percentage of just .484. He finished his career, though, as a very, very well-respected baseball scout and instructor. In fact, I think it was his daughter who told me. I interviewed his daughter and his second wife, and also his grandson extensively. In fact, maybe it was his grandson who told me this, that just a few weeks before Billy died, he was talking to a major league owner, and he said, you be sure and sign whatever his name was. I think he's going to go far. And he was pleased that the owner did sign this particular player, all based upon Billy's scouting report. He quit baseball life in the early 1980s to take care of his ailing wife, Mary, who died in 1984. Several years later, Billy remarried. And as he put it, he and his wife, Phyllis, quote, enjoyed the good life in Largo, Florida. They traveled together. He'd visit with ball players and lived in the area, like first baseman Phil Cavaretta, and socialize with former teammates at baseball functions. Although Billy was not a powerful hitter, he compensated that with his very solid defensive skills. In fact, during his 17 years in the major leagues, from 1931 to 1947, he led the National League shortstops in fielding percentage 4 times, 1932, 35, 37, and 39, and once in double plays turned 1935. He batted .258 in 1,816 games, collecting 1,613 hits. Should have gone up there. There's Billy with some friends at a Boston Writers Association dinner. Okay. By 1940, Violet and her mother, Margaret Heindel, had moved from Chicago and settled in Los Angeles, California. Violet always considered herself a professional singer and soon had these photographs by a professional photographer taken. I love the one of her in that cape and those shorts. That's in my book, by the way. Unfortunately, despite all these glamour shots, she saw few opportunities for launching a West Coast singing career. I extensively interviewed Violet's 2 nephews and their aunt, who spent her final years in a nursing home. She died on February 25, 2000, and Violet was 88 when she died, just like Billy was, or just like Billy was when he died. Now, I discussed in my book that just like Violet, the Hotel Carlos kind of had its share of hard times. Over the years, the residential hotel, which is just a couple of blocks north of Wrigley Field on Sheffield Avenue. It gradually fell into disrepair. You can look at the air conditioner up there at the very top with its trim all fading and falling down, and the column over here looks like it's falling apart. A real estate company purchased a hotel, completely renovated a few years ago, and renamed it as 3834 North Sheffield, offering studio apartments to upscale professionals. And Billy's room is still there on the top floor, far right up there. I had a friend of mine who, living in Chicago, kind of went by, took this photograph, and followed somebody inside and took a couple of pictures inside here, so you can see what it looks like. Here's my book with a foreword by Tim Wiles, a former research director at the Hall of Fame. And he wrote a real nice introduction for it. I had book plates made of the cover of this. And if anybody ever would like to get a copy, just email me at jbales@umw.edu. That stands for my university, University of Mary Washington. I'll be glad to send anybody a signed autographed book plate for the book. And incidentally, people have always asked, was the shooting of Billy Jurgis inspired Bernard Malamud to include a similar scene in his book, The Natural? Well, in Billy's shooting was in 1932, and in 1949, a woman named Ruth Steinhagen had what the New York Times called a twisted fascination with Eddie Wakus, who used to be a Cub. He was then a Philadelphia Philly, but he used to be a Cub. In fact, he and Billy played for 2 years. Excuse me. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Sorry about that. Played for 2 years in Chicago together. And I've always wondered, when Eddie Wakus got shot by this woman named Ruth Ann Steinhagen in 1949, whether they ever compared notes. But anyway, National Pastime had a big article on Bernard Malamud and what inspired him to include that scene. And the author said that that Malamud never really discussed his sources, so he couldn't really say for sure whether one or the other or both of the shootings inspired him to include that. But anyway, let me end this on something of a light note. I've enjoyed all this research, all this writing a great deal, and I spent years immersing myself in all this primary research, like newspaper articles, court records. I interviewed people. I interviewed Violet's 2 nephews. I interviewed Billy's relatives, etc. And some years ago, I decided to even make Violet a part of my family Christmas card with my son and my daughter. And here you go. I sent this out as a Christmas card. My sister made this up, and look at I even had her put something on Violet's cast there. It says, on it says, "Violet, I hope you feel better soon. Go Cubs, Jack." Okay. And thank you very much. Okay.
Well done.
Thank you. Let me stop my screen share here. I want to make one more comment, everybody. Violet said that, she had that note saying that I'm going to take Billy with me. And later on, she backtracked and said that, I only wanted to kill myself, to make Billy sorry for doing this. But Violet's nephew, Mark Prescott, told me that, when he was growing up, he knew his aunt really well, and he gave me a lot of those photographs. And one time he heard her talking to Violet's brother's, sister, his aunt, and she and Margaret Heindel, and she admitted to her that she really did intend to go into that room, Billy's hotel room, and pull the trigger. In fact, Mark said her exact words were, "I was really angry and I wanted to kill him." So that was, she really did intend to pull the trigger and kill Billy Jurgis at that time. So anyway, thanks very much for having me.
Great. Good job.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I had a lot of fun doing this.
Anybody have questions?
Any questions with anything?
Yeah.
Oh, you covered most of the high points. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did. Everybody asked about Bernard Malamud. I wanted to be sure and mention that.
When their player later called Paul Popovich.
Yeah, there's a
No
Cub
relation.
player. Yeah, I couldn't find any relationship. I looked into it. I looked at ancestry and everything, but I couldn't really see anything, you know. They're Austrian ancestry. What's that?
Okay, thanks. Thanks
Okay.
for that.
Well,
That's
great.
very good.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you very much too. Okay.
One of my best friends growing up was a Popovich.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Can I
Good
stick
oysters.
around? You mind if I stick around and hear the rest of the speakers?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, you don't mind? Yeah. Oh,
All right. Who's next?
So if nobody else, I have a piece that I just completed a game summary of for the games project, the SABR games project, and this one has to do with a game in 1998 in which the Cincinnati Reds fielded a team with two sets of brothers. There were Aaron and Brett Boone and Stephen and Barry Larkin. And so this story had kind of an interesting twist to it in that, Barry Larkin and Brett Boone were established players at the time. Brett had made the All-Star team that year for the National League. Barry wound up winning a Silver Slugger. And of course, he went on to a Hall of Fame career. Aaron Boone was only in his second season in the majors in 1998. He had been a reserve infielder, had gotten called up at the beginning of the year, or he started the season at the beginning of the year with the Reds, and then he got sent down after he hit only I think he batted 109 games. They sent him back down. Well, then he got called back up at the end of July when the rosters were expanded, and he took over third base duties from Pokey Reese and I think Paul Konerko at the time. Stephen Larkin was sort of the oddball in this, and he had been in high school in 1990. He was diagnosed with a cardiomyopathy problem, a condition that causes enlargement of the walls of the heart, and it caused him to give up sports in high school. Yet he went on to play at the University of Texas, where he was a decent player, and he was selected in the 10th round by the Rangers in 1994. And but then shortly after, he was traded into the Reds organization, but he was still sort of a marginal player in that year, 1998, in which he played in this game. He had a slash line, I think, that was like 228, 288, and 352, and a couple home runs and 31 RBIs in like 80 games. But he went on the injured list in August the 14th of that season, after his pacemaker had stopped working, and a week later he had to have surgery to have it replaced. So he wasn't any kind of prospect, if you will, that anybody would have considered bringing up, except his brother played for the Reds. And so Jim Bowden was the general manager of the Reds at the time, and he wound up purchasing Stephen's contract with the intent of having him play in the same game with his brother. Well, I think on the last day of the season, they finally concluded the transaction, and the Larkin brothers knew about this ahead of time and expected they would play together. But what happened is they actually wound up starting. He started at first base in that game, in which they did not know he would actually start the game. So thus they had the two sets of brothers that started in that game, which had never occurred before. And so Larkin wound up getting a hit in the game. Aaron Boone hit a 3-run homer. So both teams, the Reds and the Pirates, were sort of out of contention. So the game didn't have any significance other than that they had this historical event of the two brothers. It turned out to be Stephen's only game of his major league career. He got sent back to the minors the next few years, and I think it was after about 2000 the Reds released him, and he wound up playing a few years in independent ball. I found an article in the Sporting News that said they speculated that Stevens' unlikely call up had been a farewell, was going to be a farewell gift to his brother Barry, who they thought, implying that the Reds were considering parting ways with him to make room for some younger players. And he was about 34 years at the time. Well, of course, he never did leave the Reds and retired in 2004 at age 40. Brett Boone eventually went to Seattle, where he had the best 3 seasons of his career from 2001 to 2003. Aaron, of course, went on to play for 12 years with about 6 different teams, including 7 with the Reds. And he was an all-star for 1 year. And of course, now he's the Yankees manager. So as you probably know, the Boones were one of a few handful of brothers that had 3 generations of players. The Boone's father was Bob Boone, was a 19-year major leaguer, and their grandfather was Ray Boone, who was a major league shortstop, was 2-time All-Star. Actually, there's a 4th generation Boone, maybe in the making. Brett Boone's son Jake has been signed by the Washington Nationals organization. Of course, if he were to make majors, they would become the first of 4 generation players in the majors. Of course, that day, that game was overshadowed by Mark McGwire hitting his 70th home run that day. Of course, he had been in that home run race with Sammy Sosa for the year, which they broke Maris's record. So I found one other similar accomplishment with the family infielders, and it occurred with the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2012. They started an infield of Scott Van Slyke, who was the son of Andy, at first base. Jerry Hairston Jr., of course, the son of Jerry Sr., was the second baseman. D. Gordon, who I think goes now by D. Strange Gordon, is the son of Tom Gordon, and the shortstop was Ivan DeJesus Jr., of course, the son of Ivan Sr. So interesting game. How Stephen Larkin probably never would have gotten a chance to play in the majors had he been with any other team. And I thought that's pretty interesting. So, any questions about that? Anything else?
Yeah, I got one. Did the Blue Jays not have a all son of?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, this year. I think it was this year.
Okay, that's why. Okay. I can't remember I can't remember the 4th one.
Travis
Vlad
Shaw.
Jr. Shaw.
Travis Shaw was
Travis
the third
Shaw.
baseman, played with him for a little while. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So.
That's cool. I love that.
Okay. Anybody else? Got something you want to bring up specifically?
Has anybody been following the lockout debacle? Has anybody even tuned into any of that?
Yeah, I know they're supposed to meet on Monday after so many days of not talking to each other. So it's
Pitchers and catchers are supposed to report soon, so
I think
see.
it's
I know.
day 52 of the lockout. So we'll see.
Mostly NFL stuff going on right now.
What's the NFL?
The NFL, the
The
National
No
Football
Fun League.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I'm just teasing.
So what do people think of the chances they're going to start the season on time?
Oh, no.
Huh?
I don't think so.
It'll be
Still holding out hope for the regular season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
unbelievable how they shoot themselves in the foot all the time.
Well, I mean, every game they don't play, they lose money, right? So,
And fans.
yeah, and fans. That's
And
true.
fans.
Maybe the one silver lining, if they do miss some games, maybe that'll finally be what gets Rob Manfred fired.
Oh,
It'll
can
be
only
That's
hope.
not the.
if they miss some games, what?
Maybe that could be what could start to finally get some actual momentum to getting Rob Manfred fired.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Maybe
That'd
some
be good.
one for the way.
That's, yeah. Most universally hated GM I've ever seen, or not GM, commissioner. Excuse me.
Although I did respect him for his handling of the Pete Rose appeal a few years back. It was a pretty strongly worded letter. I think he was ready to extend some leniency to Pete Rose, but instead Pete Rose totally botched it once again.
Yeah, he did. I remember that.
Baseball's approach on gambling has certainly changed now that they own a percentage of DraftKings and promote it heavily.
I was just talking to my friend. I guess Archie Manning is now a spokesperson for some gambling thing. I'm not sure. Do y'all know? What is it?
Caesars. Whole family.
Caesars, yeah.
Yeah, he was like he's a little older than me, and like he said the first 3 words he learned as a kid was mommy, daddy, and Archie. And he said he said just that the first time the gambling thing really affected him was seeing Archie selling gambling, ads.
Well, they tried to soft pedal it with a PSA type, know your limits and know how to quit and all that, but it's not working. They took a little black eye on that one.
I kind of hope it goes the way of cigarettes, where you can do it, but you can't advertise it. But
A lot of people on a lot of networks, football, all with sportsbook, giving lines and this and that and the other. And it amazes me. I mean, it's one thing for people to look at it as a form of entertainment. That's fine. But for people who look at it and say, I'm going to win, have got to be really, really, really bad at math. The house will always win. You cannot do naming rights for the Superdome and afford to give away, $200 a pop to somebody to sign up for your gambling app and not expect to make it back. They're not stupid, unlike people who get caught up in that. And that's the unfortunate. It's one thing if it's easy entertainment, but not, I don't think so. I think too many people get caught up in the whole gambling thing.
yeah.
And of course, that begs the question about Shoeless Joe, that says, he is eligible for the Hall of Fame. It was a lifetime ban. And like Casey Stengel would say, the last time I looked, he's still dead. So if Shoeless Joe is no longer alive, he could be voted into the Hall of Fame. I don't know what they call the Veterans Committee now, but
Yeah, I don't know. They changed the names.
Change it so often when they go through all their hoo-ha. But he could be elected if so desired.
So Kyle, last time I think we met in person, you talked about the Topps on-demand baseball cards.
Oh, like the RTF certain. I think that's the wrong letters.
Well, no, this. Remember, you were talking about the ones that you could buy, physical card.
Oh yes.
Now, have you seen the MLB has a website called Candy, where you can buy the non-fungible tokens? You get the digital.
Oh.
Anybody?
I haven't seen that. What is it called?
I think it's called Candy. It's under the MLB banner somehow. I think you get to it. But anyway, they sold their initial set of images back, I think it was in October, and they finally made them available on the marketplace about a week or so ago. And you should see the activity on this thing is off the charts. I mean,
see, and all this time I thought NFTs were non-performing football teams.
Yeah, right. It could be
MLB Candy.
Yeah.
MLB Candy. Okay, I found it. MLB Candy. Oh yeah, MLB.candy.com.
Yeah. So anyway, it's
What in the hell?
I mean, it's just it's one step further than the cards that you talked about, with you kind of buy on demand. You know, they only print so many of them, but at least you get a
Yeah,
physical.
I got my Aussie one right here. I don't know
There
if
you go.
can
At
see it.
least you get a physical card. Here you get a something you can watch on your phone or your laptop or whatever, iPad or whatever.
Yeah, I know they're real big in the NBA, but NBA fans skew a lot younger.
Yeah. So anyway,
I just saw one on Ron Guidry put out by Topps this week. Gator.
oh yeah.
By the artists that Kyle just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
First
good.
I'll
one,
have to pull it up and look at it.
first one of Ron Guidry that I know of.
Nice.
So I got that one from put that on order.
So I heard
Where is
yesterday
it?
that minor league baseball is AAA is gonna go with the auto umps for next season. That they've actually posted for jobs for people that they want to help administer the systems involved in that. So, they've been testing some of these newer things in the lower minor league levels. I think it's pretty significant. It jumps up into the AAA arena. So,
Could you repeat what kind of virtual technology that they were introducing? I missed the word.
NFT, non-fungible token.
Okay.
I mean, it's used in other than it's used in other art and other.
I meant in terms of what they were introducing in minor league.
Oh, the robo ump, the automatic umpires.
Calling balls and strikes.
Oh, yeah, calling balls and strikes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's great.
I have such I go back and forth about that. Like every day I go back and forth about that, because on one hand it's weird that part of the game is tricking the umpire, but on the other hand, I don't know, it's it's complicated, man. It's hard to even talk about.
Well, the technology finds that the umps are wrong 8%. They're right 92% of the time. That's a lot of missed calls. It's one every 10, it's one an inning. How many a game? 20 a game. That's awful.
Oh, with no
Yeah, that's a
umpire,
lot.
the spitball will come back with no umpire.
They'll still have an umpire.
You have an umpire. You have someone calibrating who's orchestrating, keeping order, but he doesn't call balls and strikes.
Yeah,
I think it's great if
Yeah.
the technology is there.
So, have they done it at all in any minor leagues yet? I know they did it in like the independent league, but did they do it in any like major league? But you know what I mean, like team affiliated leagues yet?
I don't think so. I think it's only been in the independent ball yet so far.
I'm surprised they're doing it in AAA. I guess that's the best stadiums. Maybe that's why they're doing
Or the newest stadiums probably,
it. Yeah.
and they're wired for it.
Well, they're also getting batters used to it. So when they come, or pitchers, so when they come up, they're now have been trained at it similar to the time clock, the 15-second pitch clock.
Yeah, but what happens when a guy goes back and forth between the AAA team
Yeah,
and the major league team? It's gonna get all fouled
that's what
up.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was surprised they didn't start it lower. But again, I guess they don't probably have the StatCast information anywhere besides AAA, like the TrackMan or whatever it is they use. I don't actually know.
No, I think they got them in all the parks now. I believe all of them.
Oh, okay.
I think so. Yeah. So I guess we'll have a scandal with somebody hacking into the robo umps system, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Might not even be a team. It might just be a fan.
Right.
Hey guys, since I'm a little out of the loop, what is the latest on New Orleans minor league team situation? Or is there one? Nothing?
They're still in Wichita.
Well, this is true, but
No, there's nothing.
it's the Twins, my local major league teams, minor league team now, but nothing going on as far as procuring.
They're there's some interest. I talked to Dennis Lauscha, who is head of the Benson Sports Group. I mean, he's sort of their chief guy. He sits on the board at Loyola with me, and there's a lot of interest. But they have to prop up an NBA franchise first before they can expand. So, and no one really wants to be the third most popular professional team in a city. You know, they want you to be the main event. So we have an uphill climb.
So what's
Well,
going on?
we never
what's
had a
going on?
local big money backer. I mean, it was always outside interest that owned the team. So
Yeah.
Something like the Montreal Rays.
I saw
Oh,
where
man.
the MLB denied that was going to happen.
They'll get an expansion
That's
club.
what I'm
The
saying.
Rays and the exposed sister cities, they called it.
Yeah, the split team, but
Yeah.
Montreal's going to get an expansion club now.
I think so too.
So is the Shrine on Airline being used at all?
It's a rugby club using it now.
Oh,
Actually, it's a pretty good team if you like rugby. You know, takes a little getting used to. It's a different set of rules, but it's fun.
mhm.
It's not
I was
baseball.
at a few. I worked a few of those games. They were hiring bands for the pregame a couple of years ago, and then you'd march whoever was at the pregame party on the field into the seats, and like they wouldn't stop kicking field goal. I don't even know what you call it. That's not a field goal, but whatever it was, they would like not stop when we walked by, and the balls would be flying right by the fans and stuff on the field. It was really, but those dudes are big, man. They're big.
Yeah, no pads.
Yeah, no pads. It's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, but
Is
you know,
that-
look how football has adopted the scrum now. You know, in short yardage situations, you see the running back goes into the pile, and then all the linemen come behind him and start to push. You know, just like a scrum.
Is that a rugby term? A scrum?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
That's the
cool.
big dog pile that you see when the ball goes on the field.
You got a blanket. I'm cold, man.
All right.
Any bets on who's going to get in the Hall of Fame next week?
Looks like Ortiz is the only one with a shot right now.
Yeah, Ortiz. Yeah, Ortiz.
Yeah.
I think, I think it's probably 50-50 whether he gets in at this point.
Maybe Pettit.
Hmm?
You think Pettit? You think Andy Pettit would get in?
No.
No, I mean, if you look at Ryan Thibodeau's Hall of Fame ballot tracker, the only ones above 75% are Bonds and Clemens and Ortiz. And
they've traditionally slipped in the last 20, 25, 40%.
yeah, I think all the players slip when they add in the last, but yeah, the ones with Ped, with a stronger Ped connection is Clemens and Bonds. They slip about 20%, something like that. I think the question is whether Peds is going to hurt Ortiz in these last votes.
They've released a lot of those ballots, though. Tons of them. The sports writers themselves released their ballots.
Around somewhere around 50%, I think.
Yeah, I think that's. I was just listening to something yesterday, and Ryan Thibodeau was saying he hopes. I don't think he's got to it yet, but his hope is that he can get 50% of the ballots ahead of time. That's been his goal, and I think this is the 9th year he's done that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that? Do you guys like that?
No.
I used to. I like reading the articles that the writers that I like publish about their ballots. I like that.
Yeah, right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, but not the release of the official.
Yeah, it's.
Well,
I think
it's a way to generate a lot more discussion, right? Before the actual announcement.
We live
Themselves.
in an era of a lot of hate mail.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it's interesting to see the difference in the people that publish their ballots versus the people that don't. And but like, I guess I would be fine if when they made the announcement, if they just made every ballot public, I guess that would be fine
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Is there,
But I like,
do you guys detect an age difference in the sports writers, how they view the release of the ballots, how they, look at this steroid guys, so to speak, how they're in favor of releasing the ballots in time? Is there an age difference in their philosophy, like old school versus?
I'm sure.
yeah, very much so. Very much so.
So what happens when there's no more old schoolers?
I guess Bonds and Clemens will get in.
Is that like that?
I don't know. I know that's kind of speculation, right? The golden era and right era committees, but it seems to me that Hall of Famers like Joe Morgan are angrier about players who use PEDs than a lot of sports writers are. So I don't know
Yeah.
whether I mean, it's not just Hall of Famers, but I think
No,
they dominate. They dominate those committees.
hasn't there been statements by a lot of Hall of Famers in that they won't attend the ceremonies anymore if certain players get voted in?
I don't know. I'm not sure about. I don't doubt that, but I mean, there's already a couple of guys that got in that are on the same list that David Ortiz was on.
Did they attend the induction of those folks who took greenies?
Yeah. What about Bud Selig?
Amphetamines? Or those are okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Or Sandy
if they had-
Koufax who had a cortisone shot so he could go pitch.
Yeah, they draw the
How's it-
line.
How's that different?
Good point too.
Well, amphetamines were legal when players were taking them in the 70s and taking them in the 60s.
Right.
I guess I don't see very much difference between those and steroids, where it was so prevalent. The commissioner wanted them, the owners wanted them. Those home run races brought a lot of fans back to the stands after '94. It was the whole culture of baseball at the time. You're really wiping out a decade of baseball if you say no one goes in from that era. It was what it was.
I was at Mark McGuire's the game. I probably told you all this, but I was at the game where he hit 62 with my dad. It was like the coolest thing I've ever been at. It was like the coolest sports event I've ever been to. I mean, I just kind of take it for what it is. If any of y'all are at all interested in that era, that little era of baseball, there's a really good podcast done by a lady, maybe 3 or 4 years younger than me. It's called Crushed. No, is it Crushed? I think it's called Crushed. And it's all about not just Bonds, but Bonds, McGuire, Sosa, just kind of like that whole era. And it's just a really nice, it's not that long. It might be 6 or 8 episodes. I'm trying to find the name of the podcast. And it's a really cool podcast, got interviews, testimonials from different people. But if you're into that sort of media, I highly recommend it. If I could just find the right name of it, because I hate to tell you all the name of the thing and it'd be wrong. But
Speaking of,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I was gonna something else. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Kyle.
I'm just trying to tell you all the right name, man.
Okay.
Where is it? Well, If I can find it, I'll let y'all know, but I don't know where it went.
What I was going to say, speaking of sports fighters, remember when I think when Derek Jeter was up, a big thing was made because one sports fighter out of everybody voted him no to get elected on the first go around, and there was all this, gnashing of teeth and everything else. So when people make their findings public like that, it gets a lot of press.
And as Joshua said, a lot of hate mail.
Yeah, a lot of that had a lot of hate mail there. People
Mhm.
said, "I wonder who was that," and everything. And
Well, on the one side,
today's. Sorry, go ahead, Derby.
I said on the one side, you have guys who, say, well, Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb weren't 100%.
yeah,
But, all of those things, you have to look at the voting of all the sports writers as a product of its time. There was a big difference between the beat writers who followed the team and protected the team. They knew who was doing what, but they didn't write it for the sake of their team. They were different in terms of how they professed their journalistic integrity. They were very different. And of course, everybody else was looking for a scoop. And it balanced itself out in some respect. Very different from today. Nobody is loyal to a team or a city or a market, or they just want to sell newspapers or media, whatever it happens to be. And I think it's different. From the Hall of Fame voting is just different, and there's so much politics in it. That it has taken this long to get the greatest Negro League players recognized and into the inducted. It still amazes me, and they still only do one or two a year. So it's a different metric now, I think.
Man, any of y'all that know me a little bit know that I consume a ton of podcasts, and there's one called Black Diamonds. Has anybody ever heard of that one? That's one that George Kendrick, is that his name? The guy that runs the Negro League Hall of Fame? Is that right?
Sounds right.
Kendrick.
He has one. George Hendrick, that's it.
Yeah.
He has one called Black Diamonds, and every episode is either about a famous Negro leaguer, or he'll interview Joe Carter, and they'll talk about a Negro leaguer that he was influenced by. And when Buck O'Neil got elected recently, they had a panel on there. But that's one. All the episodes are evergreen. They're not you could listen to them at any time. There's no current events or anything in them. But listen to George Hendrick tell stories about the Negro leaguers it's about as good as it gets. That's one that I've been, anytime I have a drive or something, I'll always listen to one of those. But I've learned a lot of stuff about they have a famous two-way player that I never knew about. Just great stories, anecdotes, all that stuff.
I'm sad that Joe's not on today to talk about Gil Hodges finally being elected. Huh?
Well, that is.
Well, as the old Brooklyn Dodger fan in this group, it was quite a time.
Yeah,
we were really happy.
Okay.
A lot of us had.
That's right. Yeah, Josh, you were too, right? Yeah, you followed him as a Mets fan too, right? So.
And as a Mets fan.
Yeah.
Well, we had a local player, Brandon Gomes, who was pitched for Tulane for several years, just named general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
I didn't know he had local ties.
Yeah.
Well, just sitting
Started in
behind me,
Tampa Bay.
I've got,
Worked his way up.
and we've got this one.
Yeah.
There we go here.
That's awesome. Congratulations, man. That's really cool.
Yeah. I think maybe if you get 3 books written about you, that you should automatically go into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that seems fair. Mm. Oh man, freezing.
I did hear some speculation now that, right, they just, in the last few months, made Negro Hall of Fame, I'm sorry, Negro League statistics, Major League statistics, right? So you can go on to Baseball Reference and all and all the Negro Leagues are there. Their statistics are there, right? And not the barnstorming games and stuff, but their league games.
No,
And-
they're not quite complete though.
Yeah.
There are lots of gaps in it, sadly. I mean, I
Yeah.
get an average of 2 emails a month from people who are looking for the Black World Series, the Negro Leagues World Series that Willie Mays played. And supposedly they played a game in New Orleans. And it's, you can find the announcement in other papers, but you never find any record of the game, no box score, no mention. And it's just frustrating people because they say they know they had a game 7 and it was played in New Orleans, and there's no record of it. And so that's the sort of frustration that you have in trying to compile, because in baseball, we love to measure everything, right? And so if you have statistics, who did what against who? As Terry Cullen can tell you, I mean, he's done tremendous research on Hall of Famer versus Hall of Famer, pitchers versus hitters, and how did they do? Well, you don't have that in any sort of complete form for the Negro Leaguers, and that's just frustrating.
Is that because the African American papers, did they not cover the game, or don't we have good collections of those newspaper archives of those papers, or what? I can understand why mainstream papers might not have covered that, but I would have thought that the
Louisiana Weekly, which is the New Orleans paper, didn't cover it. And they certainly covered games. They didn't have any record of it. But even the at the time, the Picayune in the States covered it. Sometimes, just a line item mention, sometimes with box scores and full descriptions, rarely with a photograph or anything. But the Louisiana Weekly is digitized and available. And so people have searched it back and forth with no success at all, unfortunately. And yet you don't have people who, of course, at the time, people never thought about it, but nobody's got a program from that game or a ticket stub from that game. Nobody thought to keep that sort of stuff back then. Or it was not a widely done thing.
Well, it's somewhat a reflection of all historical work on Black Americans, that there's very little written material or very little written material saved. Those archives are really bare. When you read historians who are trying to do work on 19th century Black American lives, and there's just very, very little present. It started with a population that was deliberately couldn't read or write, and none of it had any importance to maintain an archive. It's part of the shame of our history.
I have a friend who is the curator at the museum, that Free People of Color Museum here, and he laments the fact that people destroyed so much because they thought it was condescending. You know, there's a fellow who wrote a book called Plantation Tales. So, you remember it as a Song of the South from Disney, which Uncle Remus and Brer Rabbit and all those stories, there were stories that were collected from all the enslaved people on different plantations. And a lot of those, this particular fellow, because of Disney memorializing it, it's still in print. He says there were literally hundreds of those stories that were just trashed because people found them condescending, trying to capture the African dialect and trying to capture that folklore and capture it accurately. Got misinterpreted, I think, with best intentions. It got misinterpreted and was discarded, and that's a tragedy as well.
So if anybody wants to see the defending College World Series champions play in a couple of weeks, they'll be over at Tulane Stadium, Mississippi State. So
Oh, yeah.
I have to put a plug in for my school. So,
They still have a team up there?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty vibrant. Yep.
What day is that? Do you know?
I think it's in 2 weeks, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, early
Game.
February.
I think the Saturday and Sunday games are afternoon. The one in Friday is a 6 o'clock game, I think.
Talking like 4, 5, and 6 of February, or is it the
Yeah,
next week?
that sounds right.
No,
Yeah, 4, 5, and 6.
Sunday's games are usually at 2 o'clock. Saturday's games are usually at 1 o'clock.
Right.
I can maybe go to
6:30
the
on
Saturday
Friday.
game.
That was so
You
great
said
when they
Sat-
beat, that was so great when they beat Vanderbilt. That was
Yeah, it was.
unexpectedly one-sided.
Well, my friend Skip Nipper up in Nashville didn't particularly appreciate that, but they had a great season as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you said Saturday they probably play at 1 p.m.
Yeah,
and that's at UNO.
No, Tulane.
Tulane.
Oh, Tulane.
Tulane
Tulane.
still, yeah.
Let's see.
My father-in-law will be in town that weekend, and that might be something that he might enjoy.
Yeah, I read a piece where I think it's 6 SEC teams are in the top 20 college baseball. Of course, Vanderbilt's still ranked number 1. I think LSU was like 3rd or 4th. Mississippi State was like 6th, and then Arkansas, Ole Miss, I think maybe Florida were the other teams. So LSU's got a new coach this year, so they're expecting a lot of big things from him.
They're playing the Friday after Mardi Gras, March 4th, 5th, and 6th. Is Mississippi.
Who is?
Tulane and Mississippi State.
Oh, it's March, not February.
Right.
No, it's
Season doesn't even start till February 22nd, right?
Nope. Starts, let's see. Right after Super Bowl. Starts 18th. Tulane versus UMass Lowell at home.
Tulane and Mississippi State.
March 4th,
It's
5th, and 6th.
Friday.
That's in 2 weeks in February.
No, March 4th, 5th, and 6th.
For some reason, I wrote it on my calendar wrong then.
Well,
No, I just-
February
I
and
just-
March are always weird because they have the same dates.
Yep.
It's always
Okay, my
confusing 'cause all
bad,
the
my
days
bad
line
then.
up.
I thought I had it written down incorrectly.
That's cool. I didn't really want to hang out with my father-in-law that long anyways.
My father-in-law was, he made it to 100. I remember we had his 95th birthday party up at Turchin. And a fellow who's the athletic director now had been there maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So he's going from suite to suite, talking to maybe donors and introducing himself and whatnot else. And right as he came into our suite, we had the birthday cake that was, blowing out the candles, and they had put his name up on the scoreboard and the whole thing. And so he said, well, congratulations. And they said, well, his dad played baseball at Tulane. And he said, really? When? I said, 1910. And he looked at him and said, well, how old are you? He said, 95. And he said, well, there's a guy who wrote a book about Tulane baseball. And they pointed over to me and said, yeah, that'd be him. And this poor guy just smiled and said, well, I'll be leaving. There's not a whole lot I can tell people in this room about Tulane baseball, but, thanks for being here. And he sort of backed out of the room. Nice guy.
That's funny.
Hey, Jim, you trying to call me? Hey, I was on another call.
Oh, yeah. I had a phone call earlier as well.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Brother Neil was going to be on, but he couldn't figure out how to do a quiz on Zoom. So we have to figure out how Brother Neil's trivia test can be appropriately graded on Zoom.
Well, I don't have obviously any trivia or anything, but they did I don't know if anybody here is a subscriber to The Athletic. Side note, I guess they got bought by the New York Times. I don't exactly know what that's going to mean. I don't know if any of y'all follow any of that. But yeah, they made that website from start, and then like 6 years later sold it for $500 million. So it seems like I think they have like 3 million subscribers at The Athletic, which is pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
Good deal.
I think it's marvelous.
Yeah.
I just hope they don't get
Did
caught up in.
anybody-
I hope they just don't get caught up in some kind of corporate bull crap that New York Times will put all kind of restrictions or whatever. Because as I understand it, they work pretty freely. They had their made up their own rules for journalism and how things got covered, and it was more of a free form kind of organization. I'm afraid they'll step into a bunch of bureaucracy, and all of a sudden people will get laid off, like MLB and ESPN
And Rosenthal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everything, I mean, I guess this would be obvious at this point, but Jason Stark and Sarah, some of the guys that I listen to pretty frequently, so far they're saying that The Athletic is going to operate independently of the New York Times.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Okay.
I saw some stuff where like New York Times was trying to get to, I think it was like 10 million subscribers, and maybe by owning this, they can count this as in their subscription base, and that might be what they're trying to do. But I think it's probably just all hearsay. But the only reason I brought it up was they did a survey. I don't know if anybody participated in the survey. They did a survey, like just MLB fan survey, your thoughts on the state of baseball, and they had like 12,000 people took the survey, and they just had a bunch of questions, and I was just looking over it, seeing if there was anything interesting to share with y'all. I mean, they said, which of the following best describes your feelings about current state of baseball, and 51% said disappointed. That was the biggest one. I mean, most people are blaming the owners, which is for the lockout. I feel like that's different. I feel like the strike in '94, people largely blame the players, at least kind of from what I remembered. Is that how it was? Do y'all kind of? I mean, I was 11? I was 10, not even 11 yet. So it's kind of hard to remember.
Oh, I got shoes older than you.
I got shoes older than that too. What I mean, in the '94, what was the feeling like? Was it like these greedy players, or was it like these greedy owners, or what was it like?
There's a lot of discuss. Just millionaires against billionaires.
Yeah, that thing was going back and forth on both sides. Like now, I see less of it on the player side. But,
Yeah, we did in this one Facebook group I'm in, we like kind of we kind of tried to figure out a ballpark of like how many players are actually millionaires, because, more players than baseball by far has the most young players playing, and the young players make less money in baseball than any other sport. And I think, I forget exactly what it was, but I mean, we basically figured out, like if you average it out across the teams, I think we came to, if you think of somebody being a millionaire is where they had to play at least like 3 years, or 3 or 4 years. I think we only came to like 6 or 7 people per team is actually a millionaire. Because so many rosters are filled with young players. So it's just like, a huge population of baseball isn't even a millionaire, which I think is easy to forget, because Max Scherzer makes $43 million a year and stuff like that.
There's a big disparity.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is the way the rules are set up in terms of 6 years before you was sick. What is it, 6 or 7 years before free agency, and 3 years before arbitrations, and then before that you certainly, almost all players spend time in the minor leagues where there's no protections.
Well, and the younger players, that's why they, in September, you see them go up for 2 or 3 days, and then they get sent back down. And then they call them back up the final weekend, and then they go back down again. There's some rule about if you're up for 10 days in a stretch, then the following year you have to make MLB. Even if you go back to the minors, you have to make a major league minimum. So they send them up for 5 or 6 days, and then send them back down, bring them back up, and send them back down. So it's all sorts of games with the roster.
Yeah, Joe Sheehan, one of his proponents, he's always talking about is, if you get called up to the big leagues at any point in the season, you should get the major league minimum that whole year. And that would, in an effort to try and stop all the reliever churn and the back end of your roster churn, where they call up a guy, he starts, pitches 6 innings, and then they send him back down the next day, and he got paid 1 day. Stuff like that. But hopefully they'll start moving in that direction, because they've clearly, front offices have clearly perfected the system of exploiting the players. To their credit, they figured it out, but it'd be nice if it swung back a little bit more.
Well, I think part of the problem right now, right, is that the pandemic has really hit the pocketbooks of both players and owners in a big way last year, and owners again this last season. I think that puts more pressure on them to resolve this, right? Even because I think even they're going to miss spring training revenue. So I think but it also makes it a little bit harder, because there's less money. There's been less money to go around, right? And so I think that makes the negotiations tougher.
Well, so now it's time for Major League Baseball to adopt revenue sharing, just like every other sport. I mean,
they do it. They use it.
Well, but not the same model. I mean, look, I'm a Yankees fan, and so I have the curse of George Frankensteinbrenner to live with. But these guys threw all this money out. Go ahead and pay the excise tax. They do all that, and you start the year with $125 million of local broadcast rights. The Twins start with $8 million. How is that parity? You're not going to get parity unless you do revenue sharing across the board. Now, that would probably be bad for my Yankees, but look at what it's done for parity in other sports. And it would be good for small market teams to have that revenue sharing. So
trying to pull up. trying to pull up this article. Joe Sheehan just wrote on January 14th. It's all about revenue sharing, and I can't get it to load on my phone. The only,
It goes back. Okay.
huh?
Oh, go ahead. I thought you were.
No, I can't get it. I can't get it till I'm gonna have to try on my computer. For some reason, I can't get it to load on my phone.
I was gonna say it goes back a generation before George to Topping and Webb back in the 50s, when local broadcasting, the NFL made the decision to share all broadcasting revenues, including local broadcasting, and the Maras, who were the owners of the Giants at the time, for the good of the league, gave up their local revenues. And it's one of the things that makes the NFL so strong and provides such balance is all this is the sharing. The problem with revenue sharing in baseball is that teams have values now based upon the amount of money that they're making through local broadcasting. As a way of somehow having to compensate owners who have, teams like the Yankees, teams like the Cubs, teams like the Mets that have this enormous income coming from local broadcasting. It's a real
In a lot of
complicated
cases, they
problem.
need it to offset the debt they've incurred to acquire the franchise.
Mhm.
I mean, look, we used to always say that the Yankees were the largest payroll in baseball, and they haven't been the largest payroll for the last 10 years. They've been eclipsed by Los Angeles, and Chicago.
Red Sox. Yeah.
Yeah, Boston.
So it's and particularly like the Dodgers, when they announced the purchase price, it was just astounding. Billions of dollars for that's not coming in cash. They borrowed that, so they need the revenue to service that debt, or it's going to have to be restructured some sort of way.
So I can't figure out how to forward an email to. Does anybody know how to forward something to our email group?
Yeah, if you send it to me, I can send it to the group.
Okay, I'll do that. But just the first couple of paragraphs, it says, did you know the Yankees, Dodgers, and Red Sox transfer as much local revenue in a given year as all NFL teams combined?
Wow.
It's true. It's true. MLB owners share a higher percentage and much larger amount of their local revenue than their counterparts in the NFL. MLB teams are required to put up 48% of their locally derived revenue into a pool that is divided equally among 30 teams. NFL teams share just 40% of ticket sales. And then he goes on, but I'll send this to you, Derby, and you can send it.
I'll send it around the group.
But yeah, it's Joe Sheehan's newsletter it's like I guess he's been doing like a subscription thing, way before The Athletic started. But he's fantastic writer. I just sent it to you. I think I sent it to you. Yeah, I did. Okay, cool. But yeah, I had no idea. But he's got some good numbers in there, and everything's backed up, with, it's all backed up. So that would, let me know if that didn't go through, but I think it did.
Is it a subscription-based article, Kyle?
What I just sent you guys isn't. Like,
Okay.
I sent it from my email address, so you'll be able to see it.
Okay.
But his writing is, I think it's like $50 or $60 a year. But he puts out 2, 3, 4 pieces a week all year long. He writes about all the teams. He writes about what's going on in baseball. The playoffs is when he really writes. He really shines in the playoffs. Makes you think about stuff differently than anybody else does. Yeah, it's good. I definitely feel smarter because of him, which is, I guess, what it's all about. Don't want to be stupid.
Does Joe Sheehan still believe there was no steroids era?
I think he believes that with expansion and the smaller ballparks and the baseball at the time that they can't test the way they can test, he thinks that the steroid effect is overblown, I think is what his stance is. I don't want to speak for him, but from my years of reading him, I think it's something along those lines. So,
Well, the apologists say, you know, Bobby Thompson could have known the pitch was coming, but he still had to hit it.
yeah.
Right. So it ain't cheating.
If you're both cheating,
Yeah.
you're
All right, guys, what else? Still got a half hour.
ready for spring training. I know that.
I don't know, Derby, did you talk to Rick Dempsey this week? He told me that Jay Gotra, who used to be in our club, had passed away.
Yep.
And
3 days after his wife.
yeah, that's what he was saying. That's
His wife passed away from COVID, and then I think Jay had a massive heart attack.
yeah, I think he's living in Memphis, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has 2 special needs kids.
Oh wow.
I'm not sure, both autistic, as I recall.
For those of you who don't know, he was a guy in our local chapter here. I guess when he lived in New Orleans for a long time, and he contributed a lot of writing to SABR before a lot of the current stuff that got started. So he's pretty active. Yeah.
A nice fellow,
Yeah.
Had a rough patch for a long time.
Jim, are you wearing a neon, like a 90s Cardinals t-shirt? Is that what that is?
I don't think it's neon, but it is a Cardinals t-shirt.
Oh, okay. I know they had those neon ones back when I was a kid. I've been trying to get my hands on one of those. Since the 90s.
I don't know where I got it. It has on the back the local TV station logo on the back, so it might have been.
Nice.
But Kyle, if you need something to wax a car with, you can just use, a shanty.
Well played, Derby.
No, I was recalling to somebody the other day that I have a whole group of Red Sox friends that we go back and forth with in good fun all the time. And I was recalling that in 2004, I sent them all T-shirts that said, "Why do they call it the World Series if it's always played in New York?" And a criminal court judge locally called me and said, "Thanks, I don't have anything to wax a car with this weekend." So in 2004, when the Yankees choked and lost their 3-game lead to the Red Sox, and which was a fabulous series, if you all recall that series, and then they went on to win the World Series. I said, "Oh God, I'm going to catch hell, from these guys." And sure enough, spring training comes along, none of them calls. So I had to call them all and say, I know you're not used to winning, so here's what you have to do. So it's a good rivalry. It's a fun rivalry. Not like people who, there are LSU Tulane fans that will go to violence over that rivalry, and that's just not fun.
Yeah,
shouldn't be that way. And there are an awful lot of Cardinals fans down here for whatever reason.
KMOX, I would think.
Yeah.
We were a Cardinal franchise for the Pelicans in the 40s, but
Yeah.
that was only for 4 years. But still, you had
Weren't the Cardinals like the furthest south and the furthest west team until the Braves moved, or until the teams moved west?
So the Dodgers Giants, really.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
well, but
Yeah,
I think St. Louis had a 100,000 watt radio station, so their reach got to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
I know. I used to work at a restaurant there, and the manager was an older fella, and he was a a Cardinals fan because of that exact thing. Every night, at 7 o'clock or whatever it was, or I guess it wasn't night games, whatever it was, he was able to, that was like the only games he could catch. Was the Cardinal games on.
In John Grisham's A Painted House, there's some wonderful small pieces of folks living way out in rural areas being able to pick up the Cardinals game, and everything would stop when the game went on at night.
Yeah, I remember.
Or Sunday
listening-
afternoons.
I remember listening to Fernando Valenzuela's no hitter on Cardinal baseball while I was driving through the panhandle of Texas.
A friend of mine in Virginia is a lifelong Cardinals fan simply because of the radio station, and that's the reason, because you could catch them on the radio.
Well, years ago, when the NBA had their 50th anniversary, they had a huge celebration in Cleveland where the All-Star game was being played. And they had a week-long series of things for all the 50 greatest players were named to a list. And my friend and former business partner, Bob Pettit, was on that group. And so we were watching all the festivities and whatnot. He said at one point, like a Tuesday night, they went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened up that same weekend. Another night, they had a special limited edition coffee table book with the two-page spread on each player and whatnot else. And he said that cocktail party where they gave out the book was kind of like a 7th grade dance. You had all the old players on one side of the room and all the young players on the other side of the room. And it was Karl Malone who walked across first over to Bob because he had grown up listening to Bob when he was playing for the St. Louis Hawks at the time before they moved to Atlanta. And that started all the younger players coming over to give props to the older players. So it was more than just baseball. I mean, they had quite a penetration for all their sports.
Jim, I remember I was in my bedroom as a kid listening to that. I would think I was 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. I remember specifically listening to that no hair as well and being bummed out, but still was tuned in and like riveted. I know I listened to the end of the game. I don't know if I made it to the end of the game, but I remember I have a weird, vivid memory of being in my room listening to my little radio of that game.
Yeah, I was. It ended right as I was pulling into Amarillo, and then discovered there were no vacancies in any of the hotels. But
I grew up in North Mississippi, and we had an affiliate at the local radio station, and that was back in the day when the players used to make the rounds during the off season to visit all the towns that had the affiliate stations. And remember meeting and getting a signed autograph, a signed photo from Red Shane Dietz and Ken Boyer.
Oh, damn. Who was the second one you said?
Ken Boyer.
Jeez.
Third baseman, Ken Boyer, yeah.
Hope you still have that.
Yeah, I still got him. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man. Good for, how did you keep that? Did you save that or did your parents save that? That's impressive.
I think I saved him. So,
man, good for you. That's really awesome.
Well, I was disappointed that that Cleveland named their team the Guardian. I just thought Cleveland Rocks had to be was the obvious name, since they're right. The stadium's right next door to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Guardians have been on that bridge for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a roller skating team, a roller derby
called the
named
Cleveland
the
Rocks.
Guardians. So I'm not quite sure how
the
they're
Guardians.
So were the Guardians kind of well known locally then? Because I heard that about the bridge too, but I never really knew about it, not being from Cleveland, but I guess local people, familiar with it. Okay.
I know that Chris Rose, who's a television personality, he's from Cleveland. And I know he talked about he'd taken his kids to those games a bunch of times, and they never knew about it, the kids. But then once they changed the name, it gave them kind of an opportunity to show them to them and sort of tell them what it was about. So I think maybe some of the parent age people might have known about it, but I'm guessing the younger kids, it's not something, if you're riding in the car, I'm sure your face is buried in one of these, and not looking out at statues on the road on the way to the game.
I was also holding out that they would go back to the name of the National League 19th century team, the Cleveland Spiders. That they would go back.
Right.
But I kind of figured there's too many, there's too much arachnophobia for.
But you might have to inherit the record too, so.
Yeah, I don't know if ladies would like that name or not. I don't like spiders either. I don't want to. I'm not into it.
Oh, I'm sure they went through, 10 dozen focus groups.
They did go ahead, Josh.
And this is probably the most benign name they could come up with that didn't offend at all.
Yeah, I was pulling. They did like a NCAA style tournament of names with 1 seeds, 2 seeds. I was pulling for the Commodores, but that was the one that I liked. But I mean, this was just like on maybe the Athletic or one of the baseball sites. Over the course of last off season, each week they would do the next round. That's the one that I was pulling for. But I mean, I don't even remember which one won. It wasn't scientific or anything like that.
Has the NFL Washington team found a name yet? Anyone aware?
Last I heard, I think
They'll announce it next after the Super Bowl, I think.
Yeah, I think they.
They're
done it.
Super Bowl?
After the Super Bowl.
That would be.
It hasn't been leaked yet.
No, I know.
Yeah, I just saw the other day. I walked past the TV and it definitely said on ESPN the Washington football team.
Yep.
That's weird. I mean, I guess it's kind of like soccer. A lot of soccer teams do that sort of thing.
So when will it hit Atlanta?
Atlanta's got the easy name. Just call them the Hammers. Done. The perfect name. Hammer and Hank.
So Johnny, you mentioned here on the chat that you had visited the Negro League Museum in Birmingham.
Yes, sir. We went last weekend. I've been there twice. First year it was open, and I live in North Mississippi now, and about 30 minutes from Tupelo. So Birmingham's about 2-hour drive where I grew up. It's a really nice museum. It's free. Not a very large place, but it's a really, really neat experience if you're in Birmingham. It's right there where Regents Field is, where the Barons play. And we really enjoyed it. One of my favorite parts is you're walking around in there. They've got an old Dodgers game playing with Red Barber. So you get that feel. You're seeing all this vintage baseball uniforms and bats and everything. And then you got Red Barber playing in the background. So it was really, really neat experience. And I call this job security. I do have a national championship baseball in my office here.
There you go.
Well, you were mentioning Red Barber and Kyle talking about sitting in bed listening to his radio. As a kid, this goes back to 1952. I was 10 years old. And it was a Thursday. I believe it was a Tuesday night, a school day in May. And I was negotiating with my mother whether I had to go to sleep then, or I could listen to the beginning of the game. In those days, I think the night game started at 8 o'clock. And I was listening to a Dodgers Cincinnati Reds game. And the deal I made with my mother is I could listen to the first inning and I got to turn it off. And that turned out to be the game where the Dodgers scored 15 runs in the first, and on the bottom of the first inning, setting a record at the time. They went around the batting order. They were through the third time when the game was over. And I can remember my mother coming in about, half hour. I said, you still have the radio on, blah, blah, blah. I said, Mom, it's the first inning still, and that kind of.
It's fun. I didn't even know that museum in Birmingham was there, man. I only knew about the one in Kansas City.
Yeah, it focuses in on of course, Southern League, kind of regional. But there's tribute to Jackie Robinson. I tell you, one of the cool things in there, they have a virtual satchel page, and you press which pitch you want to see him throw to you. Really cool.
Oh, that would be neat.
Wow.
Took a probably not a very good video last week and put it on Facebook and Twitter, but you can do the Midnight Rider. It's got like 4 of his classic pitches. You press a button, you watch him throw it to you, and then the floor lights up, showing the trajectory of the ball. Really cool. How they do that, I have no idea, but it's kind of the centerpiece, literally, of that little museum. Yeah, it's a nice facility. It's my second visit, and we really enjoyed it. It was fun. We did that, little UAB basketball that afternoon, and it's about a 2-hour drive, and came back that evening.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't mind driving up there on some afternoon or something and checking that out.
Yeah, they're open. I think I saw Tuesday through Saturday. Like I said, we were there on a Saturday morning last week.
Well, for those who might have an interest, I think I just got an email from Clarence Watkins, who says they're going to have the Southern Association Conference up in Birmingham coming up soon, I guess.
Was that March 5th, Derby?
Something like that. Yeah.
I think March 5th.
Yep. So, yeah, I'm gonna miss it again this year, but that was always a fun conference.
Man, that's cool. I'm definitely gonna definitely gonna try to sneak up to that.
So Gene, you got any projects
sometime.
going on right now?
What'd you
What's
say?
that?
I'm sorry.
Gene, you have any projects going on right now? Baseball?
Oh, let's see. No, I just finished one this past year. On Ron Guidry, I did a game story on him.
Okay.
And that was published a few months ago. Before that, I did 2 games in this book, this SABR book coming out like really soon. It's the most famous games at Metropolitan Stadium in Minneapolis, Bloomington, I should say. And so I did 2 game stories for that. But right now, I don't think I'm actively working on any SABR projects. But I did get elected to the president of our chapter, so I've been kind of busy with that. And we have a research committee that is pretty active in putting on events. That is for the group, our SABR chapter. And we are in May, on April 30th, we're having a spring chapter meeting, semi-annual deal, and we line up presenters for that. So we're doing that. I'm doing that sort of thing, but not actually writing up the game story. But I will have 2 coming up in a real book coming out soon. A real book.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. How about you?
let's see, I just finished this one on like I said, on the Reds.
The Reds, yeah.
Oh, brother infield. I just submitted one also on Joe Negro and Phil Negro. Joe hit his only major league home run off of his brother.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I did that one.
Yeah. Those are pretty fun, and they're not too hard to do. They only maybe take me 2 months to do one game, but that's
right. Yeah.
Was there any controversy behind that homer?
No, it's just they had dinner the night before together, hung out, and it was a knuckleball that he hit. I think that he hit, and somebody made a comment, says, "Well, I guess they won't be talking to each other over Thanksgiving dinner, next year, this fall." So anyway, I don't think there was any certain animosity about it.
Was it a called shot?
No. I think it was a lucky hit is what it was.
Right.
I think Joe only had like 10 maybe extra base hits in his whole career, and actually, but Phil hit like 319 or something off of his brother though. So
Oh man, there was one thing I meant to mention. We were talking about if the season was going to start on time, and one of the smaller but super important reasons I'm really hoping that it does is Adam Wainwright, who's I guess 40, and Yadier Molina, who I think is 38. They are third all time right now in games started by a catcher and a pitcher combo. They're at like 301 or 302, and the record is 324 or 325. So like if they're both pretty healthy this season, they're going to break that record. So that's something for any of y'all to just kind of keep on the back burner this season, because that would be that's like the Cal Ripken record or something like that. I mean, I can't imagine anybody ever coming close to that again. That's one of the reasons I hope they don't miss any games, is because they're going to need them all.
Who's the current record holder?
I don't. I could look it up real quick while we're talking, but it's I remember the number, but I don't remember the people.
Yeah, somehow in the back of my head, it's Drysdale and Roseboro, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Lolich and Freehand. But...
You're correct. 324 games, Mickey Lolich and Bill Freehand. 316 games, Warren Spahn and Del Crandall. And then 306 games, Red Farber and Ray Schalk. I think Wainwright and Molina are right around 306. I think they're 302 or something like that. But yeah, so that's going to be awesome.
So is that article in the Baseball Digest this month about Molina? I think I read that in there, what you're talking about, the record.
No, I would love to check that out.
You might like it. The Baseball Digest out right now. Its cover is not the cover, but one of the big stories is Yadier Molina's career.
And is that the one with Willie Mays on the cover?
It's the
oh wait, no, the Baseball Digest website says May to June of 2021.
Yeah, this is the Baseball Digest that they come out with at Barnes and Noble. Can't really tell. There we go. The magazine that you can get, and it's on
cool.
there.
It's got Randy.
It's the rookie. They are rookies of the year for each position. That's the cover, but in there is the first. I don't know. One of the headline stories is Molina. Several pages.
I'm trying to figure out how to find that magazine. Cool, man. Thank you. That's the man right there.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have a subscription, but I just got it at Barnes and Noble, and it's pretty cool magazine once a month, you know.
Mhm.
I used to get the ones years ago, the small size ones in the mail,
Mhm.
whatever. Paper.
TV God size.
You know, those are available online now. You can, I think it's like
yeah.
$20 a
Yeah.
year. And you get access, I think, to all the old archive ones as well.
Yeah.
What website, Richard?
I think it's its own, I think it's a Baseball Digest, I think.
I thought it was available through SABR.org too, that.
That's right,
maybe.
yeah, saber.org has it as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Hmm.
So I could I'm already possibly paying to look at it.
Possibly, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know if the absolute current issue is in there, but I know the archive ones
Oh.
are, but I'll send you the link if it's not baseballdigest.com or whatever. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't.
The only thing about the online version is it doesn't have a good search capability. When they first trialed it, it had a search where you could look across magazines, but it came back with a lot of hits for you had to have real narrow search criteria. And then they republished it apparently, and now you can only look within an issue, I believe, is the last time I tried it. So it wasn't too useful in terms of, hey, I want to go see what was the article about Rogers Hornsby. You'd have to know what year he played and what month and all that sort of stuff, which, you know.
Yeah, you have to have an intern to do that for you.
Exactly. Okay, I think we about hit our time. Anybody else got anything else going? Want to talk about?
Thank you very much for having me, you guys.
Sure. Yeah.
I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
it.
Look forward to
Appreciate
seeing
you
you.
sticking
book.
around
Yeah.
with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
And for the rest of us, we'll try to be back in person, depending on construction schedules and COVID. We'll see what happens, but we're going to try for the hotel out in Metairie again. So I'll let you know, and I'll be sending it out.
Actually, Derby, that construction is not going too well. So
Well, you know,
stay
they
tuned.
shouldn't feel all alone. It's everywhere. They're all having problems. So we'll just have to see what we got.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Yep.
Are y'all looking at April 23rd?
Is it
I
April?
think so. Let's see. April 23rd. But I'll send out
That's
a notice to everybody again.
That's French Quarter Fest.
There you
They
go.
got
All right,
French Quarter
guys.
Fest. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right.
Y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Stay
guys.
warm.
Thank you. Uh-huh.